Welcome. This meeting is being webcast live and recorded. The recording or webcast may capture images and sounds of those attending the meeting. The following topic has been identified for closed session: personnel matters. Public comment on closed session items. Okay, we'll adjourn for closed session at 5:31. We'll reconvene to open session at 6:06 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Brooklyn Unified School District Board of Trustees held a special board meeting on Tuesday, June 4th, 2024, where we met, discussed, and completed the superintendent's evaluation. The overall performance rating of Superintendent Pacino was satisfactory and consistent with the superintendent's contract. The rating meets the standard for satisfactory employment evaluation. The board has agreed on the final evaluation as it reflects the opinion of the board as a whole. Approve the June 12th, 2024 regular meeting agenda. A second. Any discussion? Roll call. Teresa? Aye. Sammy?
Aye.
Patty? Aye. And I. Presentations. We have one presentation tonight. The first is overview of the 2024-25 board handbook.
Good evening, Board President de la Fuente, members of the board, staff and community. Just a quick overview of the 2024-25 board handbook that you have in your packet for review. It's a first read, and then at that point, at the next subsequent meeting, we would actually approve that. So the reason why I'm doing the presentation today is really to let the public know what the purpose of the handbook is. Although we've been talking about this, and prior to me coming, you were working on the handbook, right? Now, the goal is to really get this approved for 2024-25. So we want to let the public know why do we have a handbook, right? And so again, our roles in the student success, why we need to be intentional in our board's priorities and the handbook. Again, this is the kind of graphic that you'll see us use a lot, and it's the role that everyone plays. And so definitely starts off with family and community, who are the ones who elect the board, right? And also are the ones that we support and serve their students, our students. Then the board sets the conditions for the superintendent, their one employee. That at that point, as a superintendent CEO of the district, then I take that, the what, and then move it into the how with our team. And so there's our board priorities. And I'm going to go a little bit more in depth with this in a couple slides. Here's our board priorities. So I'm so proud of our board for you taking this stance on saying these are the three things we're going to plant our flags on, right? Which is really campuses and workplaces which are safe, welcoming, and inclusive for all. That we have high expectations for each and every student, and that we're providing an innovative, high quality, grade level instruction. And so that's something that you all agreed that was another focus area. And the last one is that we're intentional about engaging our students, families, and staff on a continuous basis from the board to the classroom. So it's not just that they're going to a football or baseball game, but that we're actually having some intentional engagements with them. And so a great example last night, at John Muir was we had over 130 students and parents that came to learn about a math camp that we're going to be having this summer in July and August. So it's pretty amazing to have that number of families that are saying, I want my kid to learn math in the summer. They would do it at Fresno Pacific, and they would be studying to advance and potentially access math 1 as 8th graders, which would allow them to, in their senior year, access calculus. So we're trying to really better our students, and that's an engagement that's intentional, but also it's a high expectation, right? If we want our students to excel, we need to provide them with those opportunities to excel. And so those are 2 examples. So this actually comes from CSBA, the California School Boards Association, and you'll find this in the handbook. There was an addition because one of the things is I know that a lot of the content came from CSBA, which is great, and it's aligned to best practices. And this is a good visual as far as kind of showing what the understanding roles and responsibilities are. So the board is in the yellow, right? That's the governance team. And their charge, or your charge as the board, is to really focus on the what beliefs, what vision, what mission, what board policies and board bylaws, and what priorities, right? The ones I just went over, okay? It's establishing those things, right? That's why you are the governance team. The blue is the district, the administration, the teachers, the staff, right? And what we do is we take the what, like the priorities that the board has stated in those 3 priorities, and then we develop action plans to make them happen, right? That's the how, okay? And so we also create plans for implementation. We evaluate, right, how we're doing on those plans, and also create progress reports. And so one of the things I did promise the board and share with you is that we will be coming back on a quarterly basis to show you how we're doing in those 3 priorities, right? That's our role as the district to be able to do that. And then as the board, you're, the check and balance to say, like, this is what we said, we want safe and welcoming schools, and this is happening, right? And then give feedback, okay? And so, and then in the middle is kind of the convergence of the 2. We share strategic goals and we share success indicators, right? And so those strategic goals and success indicators are things like what happens on the dashboard, which Ms. Mendoza will kind of allude to a little bit tonight, as well as any kind of internal strategic plans that we create that we might have indicators for, okay? And so that's where the middle is at. Another way to kind of look at it, I know this is really small, but on the left, way in the red, there's the roles and responsibilities of what the governance system looks like. And on the left is the individual governance member, right? And in our board handbook, it does state in our bylaws that individual members don't necessarily have authority or power solely on their own. That's why you're a governance team, right? As a group, as a board, you have that, but as individuals, you're kind of the conduit between your constituents and the board, okay? Then there is the collective board, right? Then it moves over to what the collective board does and what the district does, and how we're all focused on students, right? Student success. And so there's definitely a good delineation between the 2, and that's in board bylaws, because we want to make sure that that the state wants to make sure that there was definite distinction between the roles. So why a handbook? It provides clear guidance to the board on how the board and district should function as a unified governance team. So I'm going to go through kind of the big sections of the handbook, but it does that, right? So a lot of times when you have a new trustee that comes in, they might not know, like, how does a board function, right? What is it that I can do? What is it that I can't do? What is my role, right? All those things. Well, this handbook we can give to brand new trustees, and it allows them to see that. It's a manual, okay? The other thing is it provides transparency with the community. A lot of times the community has a misconception, right? And I see this throughout any district, okay, that they kind of lose sight of process, right? So it's making sure that they understand what is the role of the board, like I just mentioned, and what's the role of the district, and where do those processes lie within there, okay? And the last one is it's an educational tool. The handbook is an educational tool for everyone who desires to know how a district operates. Okay, that last piece. Our operations are very complex, a lot of times confusing. People don't necessarily know how that happens, and so I'll give you an example. When folks come up here for public comment, this is a classic example, Lending District, we learned that even in our Brown Act training. Excuse me, is that a person will come up and comment, and then they're waiting for the board to respond, for every member to respond, and really the process is that there's not a response. And so what happens is the community gets frustrated. But if we're able to educate them to say, there's a process for that, yes, you're telling the board as your sole employee, you then charge me with taking that concern and then going to whoever it is. If it's a facilities thing, then I work with Mr. Price. If it's something around instruction, then I work with Mr. Jan, right, and so forth. Okay, what the community fails to see at times is that, and then they get frustrated, right? They come here and like, why aren't people, listening or whatnot? And so this handbook allows people to understand that, right? Okay, what the process is. So our handbook is really broken down into 4 key areas. It provides definitions of roles and responsibilities, but I kind of went over high level and that graphic. It has agreements for meeting structure, okay, how meetings are structured, that type of thing, right? It's important. Establishing positive governance team culture, so it has our priorities, but also has norms, right? And so we are focused on professional learning communities. That's something that that we're doing to meet the second priority of high achievement. And so in a professional learning community, effective professional learning community, that team of teachers, right, or team of administrators has norms. And those norms are usually things like being present, speaking to people in a professional manner, those type of things, right? Doing the work, all that stuff, right? Those are norms, and those are in the handbook itself. And then last thing is operational protocols, right? So those are things that are just for the community, things like, so what happens if a trustee wants to go visit a school, right? So there's a process for that. In there it says that, there's forewarning, and the superintendent knows, the principal knows, and then, there's some time in there. There's actually a time structure in that as well. There's things also like talks about the Friday update, right? That I give you all, right? That there's a Friday update and there will contain these things. Okay, so those protocols are there because again, this is really not about each of you individually, right? Trustee Robertson or Ramirez, Cisneros or De La Fuente, but you're leaving a legacy document for trustees in general. Okay, and so that allows them to understand like, oh, here's a process. Now, what would be recommended is that we revisit this on an annual basis because laws change, number one, right? So we want to make sure that the laws are aligned to the handbook, okay? And then secondly, we might realize that a protocol needs to be adjusted. And so we want to be able to do that as well. And so this is kind of the first iteration. Now, we have had handbooks in the past, so it's not that it's new to the board, but I believe that what you're looking for was to get one that was updated. And so what you'll see in the handbook is I've actually called out the bylaws or board policies that align to those areas which weren't in the previous handbooks. And so you'll see where that's denoted, so then people can look at that and look at our board policies and bylaws and then be able to see the same thing, right? And some of them, what I did was actually change the language back because it was kind of like a summary language, but the bylaw actually created the process. So I felt like it was more important to have the language verbatim versus a summary because it might get lost in translation. So you'll see some things there that they're actually just copy and paste. And that was really just to align it. Okay. All right. Any questions? Anything?
Page 30 under training, new members must attend orientation at the CFA annual conference. Great training, they put on great training, but the word must, it kind of sounds like you're telling them they have to go. And a lot of times we have people that work that can't go.
Yeah.
So is it better to say may attend?
Yeah, definitely. That's why we're here today. Is it's the first read for you to go ahead and put feedback in there on items that that might need to be adjusted. Yeah.
I concur that there's definitely something that a new trustee can really learn, and so I really do appreciate that it was completed during my term. And I did agree with that statement earlier too, because since I didn't didn't go, I was wondering if I was.
No, you're good.
Somewhere, yes.
You're good. That's why I'm so glad that like we've gone to 2 trainings, budget and Brown Act. And so sometimes that's what we have to do because of the timing, right? Yeah, of the timing. So yes, it won't always be the case. I would strongly encourage the board though to try to make it to the CSBA conference because it is a good one. What it does allows the board to kind of see what other boards are doing and what's happening throughout the state. In California, we're a unique state, right? Not just geographically, but politically as well. And so we kind of want to see what are laws that might be coming in the future. And at that conference and throughout CSBA, they will actually ask you for feedback. And so a lot of times I know, and being a person who has lobbied for the Valley, many a times, a lot of times the Valley gets overlooked, right? A lot of the legislation kind of happens in the Bay Area or LA or San Diego, and yet we're a big part of the population. And so being able to even be advocates there is super important. So yeah, but yes, please, if you have any other feedback, provide that. It's there. If the board wants to have hard copies, just let Gina know, she can provide one for you. I know that was something that you all had requested for the handbooks. And so if that's something that is of your desire, then Gina can get those for you. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Report, superintendent report.
Yes, good evening, Board President of the Fuente, members of the board, staff and community. I just be real brief. We finished the year, so that was great. Had some great graduations and promotions. And so thank you to the staffs who really helped to get those going. I know our community too, kudos to them because we adjusted the time because of the heat like we're having today. And the one thing was that the community was very receptive. Thank you to the board who, had the keen insight to like, hey, how can we provide waters and those type of things. They want to make sure that we had those for the community, so that I know that they really appreciated that. And I really want to give a shout out to our grounds and custodial crews because they did a lot of the legwork that goes unseen in those ceremonies. And they did an amazing job. And the one thing is I was going around shaking their hands and thanking them personally. Not once did I hear a complaint. Not once did I hear, oh, it's so hot. I mean, I went out there one day without a hat and they're like, we're gonna give you a hat because you can't, it's too hot out here. Be hydrated. And, they're just an amazing group of men and women. So I just want to thank them personally for just the work that they've done for that event because it could have gone a lot different, but because of their commitment to our kids and community, they actually did an amazing job. I already had mentioned the thing around the math camp. So thank you to the John Muir team. Our UC Merced partner said that was one of the best attended outreach events that they work with many districts. So they were like, wow, Corcoran really wants to achieve. And so they're excited, we're excited. And so that's happening in the future. And the last thing I'll say is I want to thank our leaders because the last 2 days we've spent in a leadership retreat. And when I say retreat, it's not that we are out on the beach somewhere and doing those type of things. We're in the CT building, right? And we're there and we're really digging deep on the priorities, the 3 priorities that you said. So what we're doing is taking those priorities and establishing expectations and commitments for those. And why is that important? Because then it allows our leaders to clearly understand what they need to do, right? When it's not clear, we get kind of all those arrows moving all over the place. Remember that graphic? What we're trying to do is keep all the arrows together. And so I just want to give them kudos because one is that they've been super authentic. They've been super vulnerable. They really have taken time to just say, we want the best for our students. And so I want to thank them. They've been amazing to work with these last few months, but also over the last 2 days have been amazing. So, and with that, I yield my time. Person.
Thank you. Board of Trustees.
I think we're going to all say the same thing, but it was a really great time in all the different graduations and promotions. So I really want to thank all the principals in the room for making it good. The kids were awesome, the presentations, the speeches. it's unbelievable what these kids can do. So thank you so much, and it was a pleasure to be there. Look forward to next year.
I concur with Teresa, it was great.
I would like to say that Teresa did a great job. I just enjoyed her speech so much. And I thought it was very motivating to all of us, not just the students, but you did a beautiful job. And also, I have the privilege every year of having the prom dates come to my house for pictures. And what a great group of kids. I mean, they just show up randomly. They know they're welcome, and they're just a great bunch of kids. We're very fortunate to have such a student body.
I also enjoyed the graduations. Thank you for moving them later. Yeah, it wasn't so high. That's all I have. Chief Business Officer.
All I have to report tonight, that the Kings Lake and Science Wing at the high school has started. So the construction and demolition and everything at the Science Wing at the high school the modernization is now underway. And the modernization at Kings Lake with the new food service building is now underway. We did come up to a hiccup with having to move one of the lines, PG&E lines. So we had a contact, Vicente contacted PG&E, and we're working with them so they could actually move a line, so we could set the building down on the foundation. But all those projects are moving along. The food service project will be done on Kings Lake, on the Kings Lake campus before school starts in August. So the Science Wing building, unfortunately, that's going to take a little bit longer because they have to go in and remodel the entire wing. So that should be done by January of this upcoming 2025. Now you my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Corporate Faculty Association, CFA. California School Employees Association, CSEA.
She's on there, but I tried to get her permission and she declined permission, so I don't think she, I'm guessing she doesn't want to talk.
Other reports. Local Control and Accountability Plan, LCAP.
It's fast.
Okay, so the first one I will present on is the LCAP federal addendum. I'm not going to go into depth in regards to that report. I'm just going to summarize and give an overview of what the LCAP federal addendum is. You probably received this in your board packet ahead of time, which is the full report. And then this abbreviated presentation. So why do we produce an LCAP federal addendum? It's meant as a supplement to the LCAP. It talks about the provisions of the Federal Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA. We submit the federal addendum to apply for ESSA funding, which are all of our title funds, Title I, Title II, 3, and 4. We are encouraged to review the federal LCAP addendum annually along with our LCAP. It's the supplement, so it's how we support the LCAP with federal funding. And the LCAP addendum should not drive the LCAP development. It's the other way around. The ESSA supplements of the state funds is meant as an add-on to the LCAP because it's the federal funding, whereas the LCAP is all state funded. So while the LCAP explains how we will spend state funding, I'm gonna keep reiterating that LCAP, state funding, federal addendum, federal funding, all of our titles. Examples of the federal LCAP addendum are programs to our foster youth, homeless, library services, our instructional coaches, and summer programs or ELD supplemental curriculum. Our LCAP federal addendum was first approved and both by board and by the California Department of Ed back in 2018. And it's recommended that we do not completely update them or redo them, because the things that we incorporated in 2018, as far as what we utilize federal funding for and some of the questions that are in the prompts, have been approved by the state. What they suggest is that we just update any actions, any services, any transitions that occur from year to year. But we are not supposed to redo the entire federal LCAP addendum. If we do that, we have to send it back to the state and they have to reapprove. And they don't really want to do that. So the less plans I believe that they work with or have to renew, the best. So anything that is in the LCAP federal addendum are just updates to things, updates to numbers in Title I. So that's the blue. It's the blue, all of the blue section in the actual report or template have to do with Title I. And that includes demographics for teachers. It ensures that there's parity and equality when we place teachers at different sites, and if not, what we're going to do to ensure that some of the most vulnerable and needed needs are met with teacher equity. Our parent and family engagement section is also in there, and it's how we are committed to support engagement at the sites, how we're committed at providing school-wide programs, targeted support programs, and programs for neglected or delinquent children. As I stated before, it gives an overview of what our services to homeless children and foster youth are, and it includes the student transitions, the programs and activities that are utilized to make easy transitions from either school to school, TK to K first on up, 5th grade into 6th grade, middle school, and then middle school into high school. The salmon portion, which is Title II, outlines professional development and growth, how we are going to prioritize that funding, the data and ongoing consultation to support continuous improvement. So in essence, it's how we support professional development and what we prioritize our PD. Our PD has to be, if utilized, if Title II funding is utilized, it has to be of long-term effect and not what we call a one and done PD or a conference. So Title II supports activities or professional development that are for long-term. Title III is the yellow section, and it outlines the support and services provided to staff that relates to English learners. It defines the program activities and services that we provide for them. And finally, in the LCAP federal addendum, you'll find Title IV, which is the purple or pinkish section. And that reinforces the use of our funds tied to a well-rounded education, technology, and the well-being of a student. We outline how we transfer the funds into Title I and how we support those areas for long-term success, utilizing the combination of Title I and Title IV. The next steps in the federal LCAP addendum is to seek approval of the addendum, and that will be at the June 26th, 2023 meeting. Are there any questions?
I kind of would be interested in getting a presentation on how we are utilizing some of the funds for the homeless education program. What is it that we're actually doing with that?
Yeah, we definitely can put something in the update, and then if there's, the board so chooses to have a presentation overall, then we can always come back and do that.
Dashboard 2024 local performance indicators self-reflection. Hello again.
Okay, the school dashboard local indicators report. That also was, the full report was provided in your packets. Hopefully, I hope you have this one in your actual board packet, not as a paper. The purpose of the dashboard is to see how local agencies or schools are performing under the California's School Accountability System. It provides a quick overview of the performance for each student group on multiple measures, and it assists in identifying strengths, weaknesses, and areas that need improvement. There are specific indicators, both state indicators and local indicators that are on the dashboard. And on the left-hand side, you see that the state indicators are graduation, academic performance, suspension rates, EL progress, college and career, and then chronic absenteeism for grades K-8 only. Within those reports, those are easily measured through metrics. And you'll see some of the metrics in the LCAP presentation that we do a little later in the meeting. But this local indicator report has to do with everything on the right side, the right column, the basic conditions, the implementation of academic standards, parent engagement, school climate, and the access to the broad course of study. The column on the left are things that can be measured through state testing or reporting. The column on the right are all what we call qualitative data, which rely on personal accounts or documents that illustrate how people think or how they respond to certain areas. So the self-reflection report has to do with the qualitative and how people are responding or have responded to different surveys or documents. The local control funding formula, or LCFF, priorities, once again, is where data is not collected at the state level. It's something that we have to do as a district to ensure that we measure and report progress through the dashboard based on locally collected data. Most of that data is surveys, either to students, families, staff. Sometimes it's to administrators, depending on implementation of standards and whatnot. It's a variety of documents that we use to ensure that we have enough data to score ourselves in those local indicators. So again, here they are, priorities 1 through 8. The ones on the left, the state indicators, have to do with achievement, student engagement, and student outcomes. The ones on the right are those that we have to collect data ourselves and then report it in the self-reflection report. So for priority 1, and I'm not going to go through every single checkbox, it's just an overview of the entire section. So for priority one, appropriately assigned teachers, access to curriculum and safe functional schools. We are at 83.08 fully credentialed and properly assigned, compared to the 84% statewide. Only 2.6% of our teachers are misassigned. 4.10 teachers are out of field. All of our facilities are rated exemplary. And all of students have access to standards aligned instructional materials. Under priority two, the implementation of state academic standards. And you'll see that it says standards met, and that is because we either meet by reporting or we don't meet, which means we're not reporting to the state under the dashboard. So standards met. Our leadership teams at the school sites are surveyed to rate how they're implementing the standards. And the average level was reported as 3s for areas of science and history and 4s in the areas of ELA, ELD, and math standards. So our sites are much more comfortable looking at and implementing, this is what this means, ELA, which is English Language Arts, English Language Development, or math standards. Yes,
Priority one.
yes, that was an error. Yes, CJUSD, yes,
But the number's correct.
yes, numbers are correct. The district, this year, the district office, teachers on special assignment, or what we call coaches, are working with departments to identify the essential standards. And the process will form a consistency and deeper implementation of our standards. So all of our academic coaches are working on helping to identify, and there's actually not only coaches, but district teachers, which means area. They are working on developing a viable curriculum that we are going to follow in order to implement the English Language Arts and ELD and math and the other areas. Questions on priority two? On priority three, parent engagement, also meeting once we report the measures of building relationships, partnerships for student outcomes and seeking input for decision making. A summary of this is that schools across the district have varying levels of parent engagement based on different factors. We're seeking opportunities to further coordinate site and district efforts to engage parents, particularly around academic awareness. It's something that they have been requesting. And that's why we're contracting with Parent University from Fresno State in order to help support that. An area constantly identified by educational partners and an area of improvement are creating welcoming and supporting environments at our schools. Questions on that? Priority 6 is the school climate with standards met. We had surveys go out to 4th through 12th grade students. We had 427 responses from 4th and 5th grade, 712 responses from 6th through 12th grade. Adult surveys, 411 responses from families and community, 122 teacher responses, and 80 staff responses. Staff being admin, classified, all other staff outside of teachers. The overall consensus is that students through 3rd through 5th overall were 45% where they feel safe, where 6th through 12th, 40% replied favorably to that section. Our staff and teachers were at 88% for feeling safe. And our parents and families felt that their children were safe. 70% of them responded favorably to that section of the survey. For school connectedness, which means that the students feel like they belong or are part of a school, our students in 3 through 5 overall were 49%. 6 through 12 were 24%. Our staff and teachers were at 80%, and parents and families felt that they belonged. 81% of them responded favorably to that section. Questions?
I did want to highlight one thing real quick for the board. So this data that's coming forth is from Panorama,
Yes.
from the contract that you had approved, like maybe April, March, maybe somewhere. But what it does is allows us to kind of gauge these indicators, which, I mean, even though we're meeting, right, because it's the overall, there's definitely areas of work. If you see like sense of belonging is where the questions are, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like I feel cared for by my teachers, right? You know, so when you have, you know, that number there, like 6 to 12, 24%, or 49% in 3 through 5, right? That's why when I came earlier, you know, stated how we had to create the system and structures in place for discipline and those things, right? Which the community through my listening session said that was not necessarily strong. That's what we're currently working on in order for that to improve, as well as the one on top, right, around safety. So at the next board meeting, we'll actually have the results, I believe, from that analysis around our discipline and behavior processes and those type of things. And what the consultant has stated, right, and they're utilizing some of this data as well as a lot of focus groups that they talk to teachers, to, I believe, students and others to, you know, get a good sense of what was going on in our district. But there's some pretty telling data here on school climate.
Yes, and you will notice that we sent, at the beginning, I said that we sent the surveys to 4 through 12 graders. So why are our students, our overalls, our students 3 through 5? That's because the survey was constructed and it can be sent from 3 through 5. We just choose not to send it to 3rd graders. It's a little difficult to get them to complete a survey. The teachers would have to read every single one and wait to respond for the students to respond to each one. Whereas 4 through 5 are able to do it on their own. But I wanted to match the language that was on the survey. It says students 3 through 5, grade students 6 through 12. So that's why that discrepancy is there. In priority 7, access to a broad course of study. Again, standard, we will report that we're meeting the standard because we are reporting the information. Where all students have access to board approved and standards aligned course materials, as well as music, art, and physical education. Our English language development is provided for all English learners. That's an important part of priority 7. Our English learners are being provided opportunities to take some courses or the same courses as their English only counterparts, which means they're given the same opportunity and access for dual immersion or not dual language, dual enrollment, electives, A through G courses, and CTE pathways. All high school core courses are UC and A through G approved. So if a student wants to take that course, they certainly can. And we have various CTE educational pathways for students to consider outside of math, reading, or language arts, science, and social studies. So that's all that we're pretty much reporting here is, do we have electives? Do we have other courses where students aren't just stuck at taking English, math, social studies, and science? And we have a variety of dual enrollment classes, quite a considerable amount for the size of district that we have. So those have replaced, well, not replaced, but they've been an addition to and have slowly been the preference for students at the high school. So you'll see that we do not have enrollments in AP classes, and that's not mentioned here, and it's because we don't have those courses, right? Yes. So we, instead of reporting AP classes, we report dual enrollment. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Corporate Joint Unified School District Budget.
Good evening.
Gonna kick yourself off.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. All right, tonight, good evening, Board of Trustees and everyone in attendance tonight. I'm going to go ahead and present the 24-25 annual budget in the public hearing. This is the annual budget as is right now. We're going to actually take the finalized budget to the 26th board meeting for approval. This right here is the public hearing. If the board has any questions, please ask them. Please stop me during my slides and I'll answer any questions that you may have. So first on our learnings today, outcomes for today, we're gonna go over those, our rules within the budget development, the state's current reality, our current reality, and any questions at the end. So the outcomes for today is we're gonna identify the role of the district and the board in regards to the budget development. Understand the current reality of the state budget for the 24-25 fiscal year and assess the current financial status of the district. So here again is the role of the district, as we seen this graphic earlier. It's just it aligns everyone within the community, the board, the district, the leaders and the students. It aligns everyone. That it just shows that we're all partners when it comes to education, educating our students and ensuring that they have the best education possible. Here's our board priorities, which we align with our budget. As Mr. Pacina said earlier, we are ensuring our campuses and workplaces to be safe, welcoming, and inclusive for all. The second, we are ensuring staff have high expectations for each and every student by providing them innovative, high quality, grade level instruction so they can become successful adults. And lastly, we are intentional about engaging our students, staff, and families on a continuous basis from the board to the classroom. So this again is the graphic of the board responsibility when helping develop the budget. And now we're gonna go here because since May revised, there hasn't been any changes, and this is how the state budget will be adopted later on this month. So as I said before, we have the 1.07% COLA for this year for the 24-25 budget. There will be no deferrals. There still hasn't been any release of any deferrals, so that's good. We're not going to see any deferrals in the 24-25 fiscal year. However, the Prop 98 rainy day fund will be depleted this year. They're going to expense $8.4 billion from the rainy day fund into the Prop 98 fund, just so we could go ahead and have a balanced budget at the state. And then the budget shortfall is $27.6 billion still. We go over to the next slide. So this is for beyond 24-25. 25-26, we know the COLA, the governor is stating that the COLA is going to be 2.93%. However, deferrals, we're not sure how the deferrals are going to be. That's going to rely on this year's tax income if they're able to raise the meet the levels that they're requiring, so they could get out of the budget shortfall. And then here, But we know the Prop 98 rainy day fund will be depleted past 24-25. So the budget shortfall can increase if the budget does not take prudent action in reducing some of its expenditures at the state level. Again, the risk in the current years and the outlying years, the depleting of the rainy day fund, it delays of $550 million in contributions to California preschool transition kindergarten and full day kindergarten facilities grant. And like Mr. Pacina said last time too, is they're stopping the funding, but they're not stopping school districts. They're still requiring school districts to move forward with these actions. They also eliminated $875 million for one-time school facility funding. And Assembly Bill 106 includes $17.3 billion in early action solutions to reduce the projected shortfall from $44.9 billion to $27.6 billion. Now, Assembly Bill 106, the governor actually took action in April to make some of these reductions, these projected reductions. So we could actually have a $27.6 billion shortfall at the state level. If he wouldn't have took that action then, we would have had a $44.9 billion shortfall. So beyond 24-25, the three big sources of revenue, personal income tax, corporate, and sales and use taxes are projected to be lowered by $10.5 billion. The rainy day reserves are completely depleted. The budget shortfall will continue to grow, and stagnation of slow economic growth, the rise of inflation and unemployment is a factor that we still have to monitor in the outlying years, because that will affect the budget. Now, here's a framework for a healthy budget. The foundation is the board's guiding principles. The board sets the foundation for us, so then we know the principles, the guiding principles that they have in mind, so then we can go ahead and develop the budget. The budget is student focused, maintaining fiscal solvency for current and future years, and our decisions are based on data, facts, and research. Next above that is the state and federal plans, which is the LCAP, which is a major driver of our budget. The CONAP, which is our federal funds, and any one-time funding reports that we may have. And at the very top is the local plans. This is site, school site plans, and any internal initiatives that we may start. Next, now here's a budget at a glance. So we know we're getting $48.2 million in LCFF funding this year. It's a 1.7% COLA. Our enrollment is at 3,189. Now our fund balance, last time we reported our fund balance was going to increase by 325. However, after finalizing the budget, reallocating facility projects to our Fund 40 facility project, we now have an increase in fund balance of $659,515. So, and then our reserves, our local reserves meet the state standard of 10% or lower for assigned and unassigned funds. So on the note side, I just want to say that the COLA only affects state funds, such as the LCAP federal, revenue, such as Title I, do not receive any statewide COLA. So we still have programs, salaries, and benefits in Title I's and different resources that are federal resources. They don't receive that COLA. However, we're still expected to fund those positions. Next, we have the enrollment. The enrollment has decreased from 22 in the last 2 years by 111. 24-25 enrollment will drop by 48 pupils. The increase received by the COLA is mitigated by the loss in enrollment. And I touched bases on this last time. So when I did the figures, it was a wash. The money that we would have received on the COLA was a wash because of the lower enrollment. And here again, here's that slide that I just alluded to. So as you can see, the COLA, we would have received $738,078 for the COLA. However, because we did lose those 48 pupils, we're taking a reduction. We're taking a hit of $753,813. So it's just under a wash. Now here's a multi-year projections, revenues, and expenditures. I want to bring your attention here. So on the first slide, the middle slide right there, it's the revenues and expenditures. So as you can see, for the 24-25 fiscal year, corporate and joint unified entire revenues, that means LCFF funding, other local and state funding, and federal funding, will equal $61.4 million. Now, the expenditure side will equal $60.7 million. So that means just what I just said, our net increase, if we go to the next slide, our net increase for 24-25 will be $659K. And our fund balance, the ending fund balance for 24-25 will be $29.8 million. And that will be in our reserves. The next one, 25-26, our revenues will be as projected to be $62.2 million. Our revenues, our expenditures for that year is slated to be $61.2 million. Net increase to the fund balance is $1 million, and our ending fund balance will be $30.4 million. On the final out year, 26-27, our revenues, total revenues for that year will be $63.2 million. Our expenditures will be $61.9 million. And then our ending, the net increase to the ending fund balance will be $1.2 million. And then our ending fund balance will be $31 million. Now, what I want to bring everyone's attention to is, yes, we do have large ending fund balances, but this is to ensure that we could, if something was to take a downturn at the state, if the state was to take a downturn and they said they couldn't make payment anymore, this right here would ensure that we could continue to educate our students, which is the most imperative of it all. Educate our students, pay our staff, and keep the lights and water running for at least 7 months until they could go ahead and kick back on. Well, with our budget, we would actually go a little bit longer with our revenues, but we would actually be able to weather any shortfalls, any storms that the state might experience. We'll be able to weather that. We won't have to cut any budgets. We won't have to cut any positions, and we'll still be healthy. And CJUSD's current health, and as I said earlier, it's very good. However, here's the variables, and we have to really stick to these variables. We have to follow the board's guiding principles when we're thinking about financials, anything to do with funding. We have to think about the board's guiding principles and what they want to achieve with those guiding principles. The next one is we need to maintain healthy reserves with the looming budget shortfalls, and that's the side that I just went over. We need to really make sure that we're being conservative with our funds, just in case a shortfall happens, like in the 2008-2009 fiscal year, when it took a really bad crash. That was in payroll that year, and I remember it was very, very hard. So we want to keep those reserves nice and healthy, just in case something has happened. Like I said, we can continue to educate our students, we can pay our staff, and we can keep the lights and water running. And lastly is maintain healthy relationships with our labor partners. To do what's best for Portland, and that's just, we know these next couple of years are going to be hard for the state. We're looking at shortfalls and whatnot, and just keeping those positive relationships open and those lines of communication open with our labor partners. Just let them know we're going to do what's best. However, our hands might be tied due to the state's budget. Any questions? Okay. Next, we're going to go ahead and go over the LCAP. Ms. Mendoza is going to come up, and we will try to do that together. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and start our LCAP public hearing for the local control accountability plan for the 24 through 27. Now, this is a 3-year financial plan, and this is based off supplemental concentration funding that we received from the state that is part of our LCFF funding. I'll go ahead and let Ms. Mendoza go over some of the metrics and whatnot and priorities, and then I will go ahead and touch base on the budget.
So the LCAP's a 3-year plan that has goals, actions, and services related to our state funding and how we are going to expend them. Within the LCAP, we have to address these 8 state priorities, from basic needs to implementation of standards, access to courses, student achievement, etc. So those you'll see that we've addressed them is UCP1, that means priority 1, which is basic needs. Priority 2 would be the implementation of state standards and whatnot. There's a recommendation on the data that can be utilized under each state priority. Under student achievement, there's performance on standards testings, EL reclassification, the number of students that are prepared for college, utilizing the data from the college and career indicator. There are student engagements, which they categorize as full attendance rates, chronic absenteeism rates, middle and high school dropout rates, and graduation rates. Other student outcomes are other indicators that we decide to use as metrics, and I believe there's only one that we've opted to use, and that is our district benchmarks. School climate, suspension rates, expulsion, other measures, etc. So you'll see that there are recommended metrics for each one of the priority areas that we have to utilize.
Thank you, Ms. Mendoza. This graphic right here to the left-hand side is a graphic that was actually based off of our LCFF calculator that the state produces. I thought this would be a good graphic to show the audience and the board to see how the state funding is actually broke down. And as you can see, the base grant is based on our ADA, which our average ADA attendance is 3,090.26 pupils. And then if you want to go ahead and move down to, we have the grade span adjustment and necessary small schools. Now this adjusted base grant right here, this blue right here, that is the base that we're receiving for our LCFF each year. And that is 34.1 million that we're receiving. Now, when we're talking about the LCAP, we're actually just talking about the small portion of funding in this green, the supplemental and concentration funding, which is $13.7 million. That funding right there is specifically allocated for our unduplicated pupil count, which is our English learners, low income foster youth, etc. As you can see above, these are new add-ons that they have, the transitional kindergarten add-on that they just added, the targeted instructional improvement block grant that's been on there before, the economic recovery target is new, and the home to school transportation is new. Those new add-ons equal to 500,000. Now, if I bring your attention to the right side of the slide, the local control accountability plan, goal 1, develop a broad-based educational program that incorporates multi-tiered systems of supports to enhance students' academic, social, and emotional growth. And that goal alone, we have 13.9 million budgeted for that goal. And goal 2, we want to create a welcoming, safe, and nurturing school environment that fosters parent engagement and collaboration. That right there is, we have that budgeted at $2.5 million. And goal 3 is the equity multiplier funds. This ensures that equitable access to high quality education and resources for those who have been historically underserved. That's going to Kings Lake, and that's $196,322. This right here is a contribution, Ms. Mendoza, correct?
It's a non-contribution.
Non-contribution bank. And so, go ahead.
And what that means is that it is not part of the concentration supplemental grant portion of the LCAP. And everything in here, the numbers that are totaling on the right, those are only what you see as the light green, teal, and the teal colors, the light. And
These
so
two
the
middle.
LCAP only addresses the supplemental and the concentration portion of LCFS. So the 13.7 million that we have within those two, that is what we write the LCAP to. And it has to address, like Mr. Price said, our English learners, our low income, and our foster youth. It is how we are going to increase and improve services at the district for those three pots of student groups and nothing else. So yes, there are other LCFF funds, but the LCAP doesn't address those.
And also, I just want to add a little caveat to this as well. I know that out of our LCFF funding, out of the 48 million that we're receiving, the supplemental concentration is $13.7 million. And what the state recommends is not only to budget to that 13.7, that minimum, but actually budget beyond. You want to make sure that we're actually doing as much as we can, maximizing our dollars for our students. And that's why, if you look to the right, our LCAP total is more than the 13.7, because we want to make sure that we're giving our students the best benefit possible.
And what we also want to do is we budget high. So in case you'll notice that some of the services or actions within the plan are salaries. Well, sometimes people drop off. It takes a little while to hire, depending on what candidates we get and whatnot. Sometimes people don't apply, so that prolongs the hiring process. And so that can alter what you spend. So if we only spend or allocate for 13.7, we might fall short. And then we have to address why we fell short, what we're going to do to make up those services and whatnot. So that's why we also want to kind of over budget, so that in case we don't get materials or supplies in that we had planned for, that we are still meeting our contribution of 13.7, because we are expected to use that minimum amount, or it opens up different reporting for that carryover. We don't want to have carryover. So we're going to go into the goals. The first goal being our academic achievement goal, to develop a broad-based educational program that incorporates multi-tier systems of supports that enhance academic, social, and emotional growth. So it is the whole child, and the impacts that can happen academically, socially, and emotionally towards academic achievement. And you'll notice that all the state priorities that are listed are the metrics that we're addressing within that. So credentialing, assignments, sufficiency of materials, English learner progress, reclassification, all of the statewide assessments that are required to be reported, UC and CSU completions, CTE pathways, number of people that are actually completing those, or completing UC, CSU requirements and whatnot. So all of these metrics, including attendance, dropouts, suspension, expulsion, you will see that during the mid-year that we are how we're reporting those. And you can actually see in the draft what we have identified as the base, where we're starting off this year with all of these metrics, and where we are going to be in 3 years. Some of the actions that we have put into place are supporting student learning, have to do a lot with PD, teacher coaches, instruction, data collection, interventions, the support for our English learners. We have coaches and teachers assigned to that. New to the LCAP is support for long-term English learners. We do have to do something different for long-term English learners, which have been in the program 6 or more years and haven't been reclassified. Some things completely different that target those, that group of students. So we'll be identifying a need for another coach and materials for that, if approved academic counselors that support students. Smaller class sizes is in here. Broad course of study, which is visual performing arts, health, nutrition, CTE, PE, extracurricular and co-curricular activities, paying for those, and then having study trips that align to the academic achievement. We also have funds allocated to library and technology programs, such as personnel, software, ERS, that is our main library, that's our librarian. Tech personnel and personnel to provide support for staff and students. Through the LCAP, we also pay for CTE pathways, facilities, and student well-being. Those are all of our health services related to mental health and the overall well-being of the student.
Like we said before, the total budget for goal 1 is $13,905,092.
Goal 2 is now the environment and engagement. So we not only want to be welcoming, safe, and nurturing, have those types of environments, but we also want to ensure that we foster parent engagement and collaboration. The state priorities that are targeted in goal 2 are basic conditions, parent involvement, and the school climate. Not as many metrics for this goal, just participation of parents, chronic absenteeism, suspension rates, and the climate surveys. You may notice that we have chronic absenteeism and pupil suspensions listed again as a metric for goal 2. It was in goal 1, it's a part of goal 2, but those two give us an indication of what the climate is like at the schools, suspension rates and chronic absenteeism. Then we would have to probably dig deeper as to if they're high, why? Our actions here, broad. And the first bullet is safe environments. And so we are allocating funds for personnel, equipment, and professional development for everybody that supports this action, which are like supervisors, monitoring students, our safety coordinator, all of the personnel that supervises or maintains safety at the school site are under this action. Promoting attendance and reducing chronic absenteeism. We are allocating on supplemental software to monitor the excessive absenteeism and unexcused absences, and also the personnel utilized for outreach to intervene early. As a third action, we have to increase parent education and involvement, which is the supplemental software for communications that we use, otherwise known as Parent Square. Support staff to coordinate trainings, communication, translation services, and those to assist in the coordination of those services.
Total budget for goal 2 is $2,573,455.
And goal 3, I have to explain goal 3 because that one may drop off. If our stability rates at 3 different centers at Kings Lake do well. So this is the equity multiplier funding that is new to the state. The schools that were eligible for these funds are those that are identified as having students with low income, parents who lack a diploma, and the school stability meeting the rate of transiency. They might be at Corbin High, go there, go back. Or they may go to another alternative school and come back. They may be jailed and go to the facility schools at in Kings County and then come back to this site. So there's a lot of movement. That's what they consider transiency. There's no stable enrollment. So that's why all of our alternative schools were identified as eligible for these funds. As you can see, most of the alternative high schools fall into that, and we have to utilize them at those sites in order to get kids to graduate and get kids to, engaged in school. So after meeting with the school site council at Kings Lake and getting input, there was one first, the goal is to ensure equitable access to high quality education and resources for those who have been historically underserved. And you'll see that is the definition of the equity multiplier. Pupil achievement and pupil engagement are a huge part of monitoring for that. So those are the state priorities that we've attached, with the metrics being graduation, attendance, and suspension rates, the things that cause the transiency or the stability of the enrollment at those 3 sites. So like I started to say earlier, I jumped ahead to the actions. We did meet. Part of the requirement of this goal is to meet with the educational partners at that site to determine what the needs are. They gave a lot of good ideas on what to do and what not, but there was one action that we felt would give them more bang for their buck, and that would be to provide a counselor specific to that site who is going to address the academic achievement needs, which they need to be monitored and develop early intervention screenings for students to be successful. They need to work with students in coaching them and developing goals and course of actions for graduation. We heard straight from the students that they wanted assistance in completing FAFSAs and resumes and job seeking opportunities, and also to help connect them to college or career placement after graduation. So this is something that counselor can also help and support. The counselor will be tracking attendance and implementing a plan to increase that attendance, reducing behavior incidents and creating individualized plans. So working with the whole child, and then identifying at-risk students to provide early intervention or counseling, whether it's behavior or academic. The only caveat with this is they have to be eligible year to year. So this goal may drop off if the stability rate continues. We understand that it will be a position, but then it will be on the onus of the district whether to continue with that action and move it into the LCAP or use additional funding to continue with that individual. So it's like a categorical position where it's hired based off of the funding. But definitely if it supports the students and we find that it brings stability or whatnot, definitely would be a course of discussion on whether to keep that position or not. But I'm just letting you know because it's based off of one-time funding year to year. We've been very thoughtful and mindful about the greatest needs and where the greatest bang for our buck is going to get us, and that would be a counselor designated for the site.
The total amount that we will be receiving for the equity multiplier is $196,322 for the 24-25 fiscal year.
Questions?
Do we have a counselor even halftime out there? I guess.
Yes.
So it's shared with the high school and Kings Lake, is that correct?
Correct.
Is there a caseload number that the counselors carry?
I don't want to misinform you, so I don't have an answer to that question, but we can definitely document that and bring that unless.
Yeah, we can get that for you in the board update.
Go back to one minutes, on the English learner, you said those that have 6 years and more that have not learned, do we have a number of how many? That's what we have that fit that criteria?
There are about, I want to say, they're mostly 6th through 12th graders. But not all 6th through 12th graders fit that profile. So I don't have a rock solid number on what those are. I do know that they fluctuate somewhere between 100 and 150 at times, depending on whether we reclassify or not. Out of the 650 that we have.
That's like 6 years. And the one. But we classify what improved or whatever it is.
Right, and that's why, and it's not only an issue with our district, it is statewide. And that's why you see that the state made this specific group, a new group that we have to look at and provide services for. And it's something that all ELs get a certain service. Now these students or this student group, they change the language all the time on things. So this student group is now going to not only get that base and support, but now we have to do something different and more more focused on their needs and not just EL needs. Thank you. Public comment? You have one. Dulce Sandoval?
Is it my turn?
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am, you're up.
Okay. Good evening. Good evening, board members and administration. Dulce Sandoval, CSEH chapter president. So our classified unit still have several unfilled positions that, if not filled over summer, will result in a huge burden to these departments or employees who will be tasked with picking up the extra duties and responsibilities without any additional compensation. Classified have yet to receive our corrected contracts for the 24-25 school year. We were made aware by Mr. Price of the errors made back on May 9th, but as of yet, we haven't received the corrected ones. We understand this is a very busy time for the district, but the majority of classified have gone for summer vacation already. So we would want an update on when those would be ready and distributed to the unit. While we appreciate the work that Mr. Pacina is doing with district admin, how will this translate into how the support staff is involved and informed of all of this work and changes being made? Will the support staff be briefed at each site in the beginning of the school year? And how will professional development be provided to classified to make sure that we are provided the tools necessary to execute these new changes? We appreciate all of the board's support this school year, and we hope next year will be a year of growth for all of us and a better understanding of our roles and responsibilities as classified support staff, and that our supervisors and administration take the time to learn, ask questions, and truly understand the vital supports and work we do all year round. More acknowledgement and recognition for what we do good, and understanding and training for areas of weakness and improvement. We shouldn't have to wait until our yearly evaluations to receive feedback from our supervisors. This should be done on a quarterly basis with real and depth and clear feedback. A good morning and a how do you do goes a long way for classified staff as well, just like our students. I hope everyone has a restful and great summer, and we hope the new year will bring forth positive changes district-wide, especially to the morale and the working environments for classified staff. A quick suggestion for next year for our CHS graduation, As it stands now, there are 230 students in the 2025 class. As a parent and community member, I hope that the decision is made to open up both sides of the stadium like other high schools do. It's not fair to force students and families to choose who to leave out of that momentous event. While the YouTube link was a great idea, there were many technical issues that made it nearly impossible to fully view in full, as there was no sound and severe buffering delays. Thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you. Public hearing. I will now open the public hearing to allow for public comment on the following items. Conduct a public hearing and receive the California School Employees Association CSEA proposal for 2024-25 collective bargaining negotiations, second read. Do I have a motion to receive the California School Employees Association proposal for 2024-25 collective bargaining negotiations?
I'm sorry, making a motion on that.
To
I thought it
receive.
was just a second read.
Yeah, this is just to receive their openers. That's all it is. Just to receive them, yeah,
First one was.
right. Like, the first one was they gave them to us. This is actually to receive them, yeah, which is the second read.
I'll second.
It's on the motion, which
Roll call. Teresa? Aye. Sammy?
I,
Patty?
Aye.
And I. Conduct a public hearing and receive the Corcoran Joint Unified School District proposal for California School Employees Association CSEA 2024-25 collective bargaining negotiations, second read. Motion,
well, second,
any discussion? Teresa?
Aye.
Sammy?
I,
Patty?
Aye.
And I. Conduct a public hearing for the local control accountability plan, LCAP. Is there anybody who would like to comment? Conduct a public hearing for the Corcoran Joint Unified School District budget. If there's no comment, I will close the public hearing. Action items, consent agenda.
I second.
Any discussion?
There was just a correction I had asked to be done. I didn't get an update. Was it corrected? Oh, thank you.
Roll call. Teresa?
Aye.
Sammy?
Aye.
Patty?
Aye.
And I. Administration, consider the approval of the school plan for student achievement SPSA for Bret Hart, John C. Fremont, Mark Twain Elementary, John Muir Middle School, Corcoran High School.
Make a motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call. Teresa?
Aye.
Sammy?
I,
Patty?
Aye.
And I. Consider the approval of the 2024-25 consolidated application spring release.
motion,
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call. Teresa?
Aye.
Sammy?
I,
Patty?
Aye.
And I. Consider the approval of the 2024-2027 CJUSD master plan for English learners.
I move to approve.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call. Teresa?
Aye.
Sammy?
I,
Patty?
Aye.
And I. Consider the approval of Title I, Part A, LEA Level Parent and Family Engagement Policy.
I move to approve.
second,
Any discussion? Roll call. Teresa?
Aye.
Sammy?
I,
Patty?
Aye.
And I. Consider the approval to purchase supplemental ELD materials, English 3D.
A motion?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, Teresa. Aye. Sammy.
Aye.
Patty.
Aye.
And I. Consider the approval of board policy 4112.8 employment of relatives.
We'll make a motion to approve.
I second.
Any discussion?
Yes, I'd like to discuss the, and I'm sorry, Gina, I didn't get the copy to make sure the verbiage, but initially had said, the hiring authority to not be participating in the hiring process. I wanted to ensure that it wasn't a relative that was in the hiring process either. So on the 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph, it says the board prohibits the hiring manager from any participation in the hiring process. Did we change it to add that, well, the bottom, the employee?
Yeah, so it says the board prohibits the hiring manager from any participation in the hiring process of a close relative or cohabitant. So it makes that distinction there. Okay, so they wouldn't be a part of that process. And then it also says after that, the board prohibits the appointment of any person up to a position for which his or her close relative maintains management, supervisory, evaluation, or promotion responsibilities, and prohibits an employee from participating in any decision that singularly applies to any of his or her close relatives. So in that first sentence at the end, it's denoting that they wouldn't be able to, if they had a close relative or cohabitant, that they wouldn't be a part of the process, the hiring process. I think that's what you're asking for.
Correct. I thought that it would have been in the first sentence, but I see what you're saying. Okay. All right, thank you.
Roll call, Teresa.
Aye.
Sammy.
Aye.
Patty.
Aye.
And I. Receive the 2024-25 Board of Education Handbook. First read. Business, consider approval of final site web services order.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, can you explain a little bit on that? I think I'm not in the dark on it.
Yeah, so Mr. Berry can help as well. But what we do is we pay an annual fee to our web service company. And what we found is it's pretty antiquated. So Mr. Berry did an amazing job of working with staff, at all the different sites to look at various vendors. And through that, they chose Final Site as the one vendor that had one attractive websites, which also brings forth people who are looking at our district, to kind of bring them in as we're looking at declining enrollment, but also ease of editing it so they can put stuff on there. On the front end, I believe it's, I think we pay offhand, Mr. Berry, how much do we pay for our current service? Do you remember?
Put the numbers on the thing.
Yeah, it's like,
We're saving a lot of money by going to these guys.
yeah, we're saving like half, more than half.
Yeah.
More than 50%, yeah. By going with these guys, they're gonna have one-time setup fee, but then after that, the ongoing, I think, is like $7,500 or something like that. Yeah, whereas our current one is close to 20. Yeah,
Thank you. Go ahead and motion.
1 second.
Roll call, Teresa.
Aye.
Sammy.
Aye.
Patty.
Aye.
And I. Future agenda items. Board bylaw 9322 agenda meeting materials states the following: any board member or member of the public may request that a matter within the jurisdiction of the board be placed on the agenda of a regular meeting. The request shall be submitted in writing to the superintendent or designee with supporting documents and information, if any, at least 1 week before the scheduled meeting date. Items submitted less than a week before the scheduled meeting date may be postponed to a later meeting in order to allow sufficient time for consideration and research of the issue. Are there any items which the board would like to propose being agendized? Please provide a quick summary of the request.
As requested last time, I'd like to revisit the visitors policy, please.
Would the majority of the board like this agendized?
I don't have an issue with that, with not, I would like to know about that as well.
I would as well.
Just for clarification, is there any specific part of the board policy that you're looking for, or as we
No.
begin to?
I just wanna look at the language in allowing parents to attend events on campus without disruption to the education process. And make sure that we are allowing parents. I think I appreciate parent involvement in their child education. A lot of parents don't want to get involved in it. And I see that I don't want to give the impression that we don't want parents on site.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Like motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Roll call, Teresa. Aye. Sammy.
Aye.
Patty. Aye. And I. Meeting is adjourned at 7:41.